The gavel slammed down like a gunshot in that stuffy Cook County courtroom. And just like that, the house I called home for 20 years. The creaky Victorian on Maple Street with its sagging porch swing and ghost stories etched into every floorboard. Slipped from our fingers forever. Freak! She'd hissed at me the night before, her voice dripping venom as she clutched that pristine wedding veil like a noose, her eyes raking over me as if I were some stain she could scrub out of her perfect new life. And in that split second, as the judge's words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire, I saw my uncle's face crumple. The man who'd bandaged my scraped knees and taught me how to throw a curveball, now reduced to a stranger in his own legacy. I was 8 when the accident took my parents. A slick Chicago winter road, black ice under the tires of their old Ford, and poof, gone. 1 minute, Mom's laughter echoing through our tiny apartment on the south side, Dad's calloused hands ruffling my hair after a Cubs game. The next, sirens wailing and a social worker's clipboard thrust under my nose. But Uncle Lorenzo? He didn't hesitate. He stormed into that fluorescent-lit office like a freight train, his work boots leaving mud tracks on the linoleum, and scooped me up without a backward glance. "This boy's family now," he'd growled, his voice thick with that South Side grit, the kind that said he'd fight God himself if it meant keeping me safe. Lorenzo Moretti, 42 and widowed himself. His wife, my Aunt Clara, lost to cancer 2 years prior, was a high school history teacher with calluses from weekend carpentry gigs and a heart big enough to fill the Grand Canyon. He raised me like a son because, hell, I was his son in every way that mattered. We moved into the Maple Street house that spring, a fixer-upper he'd inherited from his folks, all warped gingerbread trim and secrets in the attic. It smelled like sawdust and fresh coffee in those early days. Lorenzo hammering away at loose banisters while I trailed behind him, handing tools and asking a million questions. "Why's the Mississippi River called the Father of Waters, Uncle L?" I'd pipe up, and he'd chuckle, that deep rumble that made my chest feel warm. "Because it gives life to everything downstream, Nat. Just like family." He never missed a parent-teacher conference, never batted an eye when I brought home straight A's or when I struck out in Little League. He was my anchor in the storm of grief, the one who sat with me on the porch swing at midnight when the nightmares clawed their way back, whispering stories of Ellis Island immigrants until I drifted off. High school hit like a sucker punch. I was Nathaniel Moretti now, legally if not by blood, navigating the minefield of adolescence in a city that chewed up dreamers and spat out cynics. Lorenzo saw the changes before I did. The way I'd linger in the bathroom mirror, tracing the sharp line of my jaw, wondering why the girls in homeroom made my stomach twist in all the wrong ways. It was junior year, after a disastrous attempt at prom with Sarah Jenkins, her awkward kiss tasting like cherry chapstick and regret, that I cracked open. We were elbow-deep in spaghetti sauce one Sunday, the kitchen radio crooning Sinatra, when the words tumbled out. "Uncle L, I think I'm gay." My voice was a whisper, barely audible over the sizzle of garlic. I braced for the storm, the disappointment, the phase lectures I'd overheard from kids at school whose dads quoted Bible verses like ammunition. But Lorenzo just set down the wooden spoon, wiped his hands on his apron, and pulled me into a bear hug that smelled like oregano and Old Spice. "Nathaniel," he said, his voice steady as Lake Michigan on a calm day, "you're my boy. Gay, straight, sideways, you're you. And that's enough." He didn't make a fuss, didn't drag me to therapists or pride parades. He just kept being Lorenzo, stocking the fridge with rainbow sprinkles on my birthday cake. Subtle, but I caught it, nodding along when I shyly mentioned a crush on the debate team captain. That acceptance? It was the foundation he built under me, brick by American brick, in a world that still treated folks like me as punchlines. College flew by in a blur of Lakeview coffee shops and midnight cram sessions at DePaul. I majored in journalism, chasing stories that mattered, the evicted families in Pilsen, the drag queens fighting for stage rights in Boys Town. Lorenzo drove up for every parent's weekend, his beat-up Chevy groaning under the weight of care packages. Homemade cannoli, dog-eared copies of Studs Terkel. "Write the truth, Nat," he'd say, clapping my shoulder. "It's the only thing that lasts." I graduated into the 2008 crash, internships turning to unpaid gigs, but he never let me crash on the couch without a job hunt plan. I scraped by as a freelance reporter for the Tribune, covering neighborhood beats, while moonlighting at a Wicker Park bookstore. That's where I met Alex. Tall, with ink-stained fingers and a laugh that lit up the stacks like fireworks. Alex Rivera was a grad student in literature, all brooding intensity and quoting Whitman like scripture. Our first date was falafel at a hole-in-the-wall on Milwaukee Avenue, rain pattering on the awning as we talked for hours about Kerouac's open roads and the ache of unrequited longing. "You're like a character from a Fitzgerald novel," he teased, his dark eyes crinkling. "Too honest for this town." I fell hard, the kind of love that sneaks up on you like a summer thunderstorm. Fierce, electric, soaking you to the bone. Lorenzo adored him from the jump, inviting us over for Sunday roasts where they'd bond over White Sox stats and my disastrous attempts at tiramisu. "He's a keeper, Nat," Uncle L murmured one night as we washed dishes. Alex charming the ferns in the living room. "Hold on tight." Life settled into a rhythm. The house on Maple Street our North Star. Lorenzo retired early from teaching, his pension barely covering the mortgage, but he picked up consulting gigs for the Chicago History Museum, spinning tales of Prohibition speakeasies to wide-eyed tourists. I landed a staff gig at the Sun-Times, chasing leads on corruption scandals, while Alex finished his thesis and started adjuncting at Roosevelt. We talked marriage sometimes in hushed tones on the porch swing, civil unions turning to full equality after Obergefell, rings glinting under the string lights. "We'll do it right here," I'd say, gesturing to the yard where Lorenzo had planted Clara's roses. Uncle L walking me down the aisle. Then Elena arrived, a whirlwind in Louboutins and designer suits, crashing into our world like a Category 5 off Lake Michigan. Lorenzo met her at a museum gala, widowed real estate mogul, sharp as a switchblade, with cheekbones that could cut glass and a laugh like champagne bubbles. She was 52, 10 years his junior, fresh off a messy divorce from some Wall Street shark. "She's got fire, Nat," he confided over beers at the local tavern, his cheeks flushed. "Reminds me of your aunt. Fierce, you know?" I wanted to be happy for him. Hell, I was. The house buzzed with new energy. Candlelit dinners, her perfume mingling with his aftershave. Alex and I raised toasts at their engagement party. The backyard strung with lanterns, swing jazz floating from the speakers. But cracks spiderwebbed early. Elena's eyes would narrow when Alex and I stole a kiss in the kitchen, her smile tightening like a rusted hinge. "So progressive," she'd purr. But there was an edge, a Midwestern chill seeping through her East Coast polish. She started redecorating, tossing Lorenzo's faded Cubs pennants for sleek abstract prints, suggesting we tone it down during family holidays. "Not everyone understands your lifestyle," she said once, over a tense Thanksgiving turkey, her fork spearing a carrot with unnecessary force. Lorenzo waved it off, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, the doubt she'd planted like a weed. The wedding was a spectacle, June heat wave turning the backyard into a steam bath. Elena in ivory silk, Lorenzo dapper in a charcoal suit. Vows exchanged under a floral arch while Alex squeezed my hand, whispering, "She's trouble, Nat." I brushed it off. Love makes fools of us all. But on the honeymoon flight to Napa, Elena's text started, "Lorenzo adores you, Nathaniel, but perhaps it's time you stood on your own?" Subtle barbs, laced with concern. When they returned, she moved in seamlessly, her boxes of crystal and couture claiming the guest room. "Our home now," she declared, hanging a gilt mirror that dwarfed Clara's old photos. It escalated in whispers. I'd catch her on calls with her lawyer ex, voice low and conspiratorial, poring over deeds in the study late at night. Lorenzo, smitten, defended her. "She's just nesting, Nat." But his hugs lingered longer, apologies unspoken. Alex and I planned our escape, scouting apartments in Logan Square, but the house pulled like gravity. Then came the night that shattered everything. I'd come home early from a stakeout, bone-tired, only to find the front door ajar, voices slicing through the foyer like broken glass. "He's a freak, Lorenzo," parading that boyfriend around like it's normal. "This house is ours, your legacy, not his sideshow." Elena's words, shrill and unfiltered, from the living room. I froze in the shadows, heart hammering, as Lorenzo's reply cracked like thunder. Nathaniel's family, Elena. Blood or not, he's mine. But she laughed, cold and crystalline. Family? He's a liability. Sign this, or watch me walk. I stumbled back, bile rising, and fled to the porch swing, the rain starting as a drizzle that matched my tears. Alex found me there at dawn, soaked and shivering, pulling me into his arms without a word. We leave tomorrow, he said, fierce. But it was too late. By week's end, Elena had her hooks in deep, forged addendums to the deed, whispers of Lorenzo's instability from the cancer days. A prenup she'd twisted into a noose. She claimed undue influence, painted me as the manipulative nephew leeching off his uncle's goodwill. For your own good, she cooed at the kitchen table, sliding papers across like poisoned candy. Lorenzo, eyes hollow, signed, drunk on her promises of security, blind to the betrayal gnawing at his core. The eviction notice came a month later, slapped on the door like a scarlet letter. Illegal occupant. It read, my name inked in red. Alex and I packed in silence, boxes of memories mocking us. Lorenzo's tool belt, my first byline framed in cracked glass. Uncle L stood in the driveway, rain sheeting down, Elena's Mercedes idling like a predator. I'm sorry, Nat, he choked, voice breaking. I thought love fixed everything. We crashed at Alex's sister's place in Andersonville, a shoebox apartment smelling of patchouli and takeout Thai. The walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments bleed into ours. Nights blurred into a haze of job hunts and court dates. My bylines drying up as editors sensed the desperation in my pitches. Alex held the line. His adjunct pay stretched thin, but resentment simmered. Late nights at the bookstore turning to slammed doors, accusations flying like shrapnel. You should have seen it coming, Nat. She's a viper, and you let her in. He'd pace the fire escape, cigarette smoke curling like accusations, while I'd curl on the futon, replaying Elena's sneer, the way she'd called me a freak as if it were fact, not fear. Lorenzo called sporadically, voice muffled through the line like he was underwater. She's changed. Nat says it'll all blow over. But I heard the lie, the hollow echo of a man hollowed out. He visited once, pulling up in a cab he couldn't afford, hands trembling as he pressed a shoebox into my lap. Clara's rosary, my dad's old watch, a stack of letters tied with twine. Keep these, he muttered, eyes darting to the door as if Elena might materialize. We hugged awkwardly, the gulf between us widening like the Chicago River in flood. Fight her, I whispered, but he just shook his head, defeated. She's got the lawyers, kid. I'm tired. The betrayal festered, a slow poison. I dove into the story, my story, pitching it to every outlet from the Reader to national mags. Queer nephew evicted. A tale of homophobia and heirloom theft. Rejections piled up. Too personal, too litigious. Elena's firm buried complaints under NDAs and cease and desists. Her real estate empire a fortress of fine print. But Alex? He was my lifeline, pulling all-nighters to fact-check, his fingers flying over laptop keys while I paced, rage boiling. One night, after a particularly brutal voicemail from her, stay away, or we'll make sure your little love nest crumbles too. We made love on that lumpy futon, desperate and tender, his whispers against my skin a vow. We're building our own house, Nat, brick by brick. Suspicion clawed at me, though. Late one evening, scrolling Elena's LinkedIn masochism, sure, I stumbled on a ghost. A 2012 bankruptcy filing, her ex-husband's name tangled in fraud allegations. Digging deeper, fueled by black coffee and spite, I uncovered threads. Shell companies, flipped properties snatched from grieving widows. The house on Maple, it wasn't just a home. It was equity, a nest egg Lorenzo had poured his pension into. She'd married him for the deed, plain as day, her freak slur a smokescreen for greed. I confronted him at a dingy diner off Halstead, sliding printouts across the Formica. She's robbing you blind, Uncle L. Wake up. His face crumpled, fork hovering over cooling eggs. I know, he admitted, voice a rasp. But she's all I got left. The words landed like a gut punch me, the boy he'd raised, reduced to an afterthought. We parted in silence, rain slicking the streets, and I drove to Alex's in a borrowed beater, fury twisting the wheel. That's when the call came. Lorenzo, slurring, from a bar in Bridgeport. Nat, I signed it all over. The house, the savings. For her. Sobs choked the line, and something in me shattered. I raced across town, tires hydroplaning, arriving to find him slumped at the counter, Elena's shadow looming in my mind. The bartender, a grizzled vet named Mick, waved me over. Your uncle's in rough shape, kid. Says something about a witch in pearls. I hauled Lorenzo into the passenger seat, his head lolling, confessions spilling like cheap whiskey. She promised forever, Nat. But then the lawyers, they twisted it. Said you were poison. That our arrangement invalidated everything. Arrangement? 20 years of fatherhood. Dismissed like a bad lease. We made it back to Andersonville as thunder cracked. Alex helping me wrestle him onto the couch, brewing coffee strong enough to strip paint. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving. Lorenzo nursing a hangover and regrets. I failed you, he croaked, eyes bloodshot. Alex, ever the mediator, squeezed his shoulder. No, she did. But we fixed this together. For the first time, hope flickered, fragile as a match in wind. We huddled over laptops, piecing a plan. Public records requests, a pro bono attorney from the Lambda legal hotline. My journalist contacts rallied like an underground army. Elena's empire had cracks. Whispers of similar scams in Milwaukee court files. Victims too scared to speak. Expose her, Alex urged, his hand warm on mine. Turn the freak into the hero. The counteroffensive launched quietly. I filed for quiet title, challenging the deed transfer as duress-induced fraud. Affidavits from neighbors swearing to Lorenzo's soundness. Alex ghostwrote op-eds for me, framing it as a queer family saga in the era of marriage equality. Love versus legacy, homophobia's long shadow. The Sun-Times bit first, a front-page spread. Widower's vow betrayed. New wife accused of stealing family home from gay nephew. Elena's response was swift. A smear campaign. Anonymous tips to tabloids painting me as the gold digger, Lorenzo as senile. Protecting our marriage, her statement read. All polished PR. Climax brewed in the courtroom. That same Cook County hall where dreams went to die. October chill seeped through the marble. Spectators murmuring as Elena glided in. Pearls gleaming like teeth. Lorenzo testified first, voice steadying as he recounted our life. The accident, the porch swings, my coming out over saucepans. Nathaniel's not blood, he said, meeting my eyes across the aisle. But he's my heart. Tears pricked. Alex's grip anchored me. Then her turn. Cross-examination a bloodbath. My attorney unveiling emails, her plotting with the lawyer. The nephew's the weak link. Play the queer card. She cracked then. Facade splintering. He's unnatural. She spat, jowls quivering, the courtroom gasping. Parading his perversion in my home. The judge banged the gavel, but the damage was done. Her bigotry laid bare, the jury's faces hardening. Recess called. I cornered her in the hall, voice low. You called me a freak to hide your theft. But freaks like me, we survive. She sneered, but fear flickered, game over. The verdict dropped 2 days later. Deed invalidated, fraud proven, Elena's assets frozen pending restitution. She fled to her ex's Hampton's lair, tail between designer legs, leaving scorch marks on our lives. Lorenzo reclaimed the house, but it wasn't the same. Ghosts lingered in the empty rooms, trust a casualty. We moved back in, Alex and I claiming the attic as our nook, Lorenzo puttering in the garden with new purpose. Therapy sessions bridged the chasms, his apologies weaving into forgiveness. Winter thawed into spring, and on a crisp May evening, under that same floral arch, now woven with pride flags, we said our vows. Lorenzo walked me down the makeshift aisle, his arms steady, Alex's eyes shining like the city skyline. To family, he toasted later, glasses clinking. The kind that chooses you. The house on Maple Street stood sentinel. Not stolen but scarred. A testament to betrayal's bite and love's stubborn bloom. In America, where dreams fracture and reform like fault lines, we'd built something unbreakable. Not a legacy of bricks, but of us. Yet the scars ran deeper than we'd admitted, hidden like fault lines under fresh sod. The house creaked with unspoken weight that first summer back, every floorboard a reminder of the auction block we dodged by inches. Lorenzo threw himself into renovations. New plumbing, a fresh coat of sage on the kitchen walls. But his laughter rang hollow, echoing off beams he'd once swung hammers at with joy. "It's ours again, Nat," he'd say, slapping paint onto trim. But his eyes, shadowed by crow's feet deepened overnight, betrayed the lie. Elena's ghost haunted him, her barbs burrowing like ticks. Unnatural, she called not just me, but us. The unconventional knot of uncle and nephew, now laced with Alex's easy affection. Alex and I settled into the attic, transforming it into a writer's garret with thrift store desks and string lights that mimicked stars over the lake. Our marriage certificate, framed above the bed, was a talisman. Illinois ink on crisp paper, affirming what Elena had tried to erase. But intimacy faltered. His touches, once fire, turned tentative, as if betrayal had inoculated us against vulnerability. "I'm scared," he confessed one night, rain drumming the skylight like impatient fingers. "What if it's not over? What if she comes back?" I pulled him close, our heartbeats sinking in the dark, but doubt gnawed. Had her poison seeped into our foundation too? Journalism became my exorcism. The Sun-Times series ballooned into a book deal, Freak's Legacy. A queer fight for American home. Deadlines a whip cracking me forward. Interviews poured in. Podcasts dissecting homophobic inheritance laws. TEDx slots on chosen family in the heartland. Lorenzo beamed from the audience, pride swelling his chest. But privately, he withered. Doctor visits revealed the toll: high blood pressure, insomnia chased by pills. Stress? The quack in his white coat dismissed, but I saw the truth. A man who'd given everything, only to watch it clawed away. Fall brought the reckoning. A letter arrived, crisp envelope postmarked Manhattan, Elena's looping script like spider silk. Settlement terms. It read, her lawyer's letterhead a crown of thorns. Not an apology, no, that would humanize her, but a buyout offer, chump change to paper over the fraud. For closure, it lied. Lorenzo's hands shook as he read it aloud in the study, voice cracking on her name. She wants to erase us, Nat, like we were a bad investment. Rage boiled, but beneath it pity stirred. A woman so hollow she'd devour her own happiness for a deed. We burned it in the backyard fire pit, flames devouring the pages as Alex strummed his guitar, folk chords weaving a requiem. To ashes, Lorenzo toasted, flask of bourbon glinting. That night, confessions spilled like embers. I was lonely, he admitted, staring into the glow. After Clara, the quiet. Date me. Elena was light, or so I thought. I knelt beside him, the grass damp under my knees. You weren't wrong to love Uncle L. She was. His hand found mine, callous as rough as truth. And you? Forgiving a fool like me? The question hung, heavy as the autumn moon. Forgiveness wasn't a switch flipped. It was a garden weeded daily, thorns drawing blood. But in that firelight, with Alex's melody underscoring our fractures, something shifted. We were human, flawed, fierce, American in our stubborn rebuilds. Winter deepened the bonds. Holidays transformed. No tense silences, but raucous game nights with Alex's sprawling Rivera clan. Tays piling tamales high, uncles debating bears trades. Lorenzo carved the turkey with renewed vigor, his stories of bootleggers and bluesmen drawing laughs that filled the rooms Elena had chilled. I watched him thaw, color returning to his cheeks, and realized the humanistic core. Not victory over her, but reclamation of us. Yet drama lurked, uninvited. Spring unearthed Elena's final gambit. A civil suit filed in federal court, alleging defamation from my book blurbs. Malicious falsehoods. Her complaint whined, seeking damages to bankrupt us anew. The call came mid-edit, my agent frantic. She's gunning for blood, Nat. Panic surged, visions of ramen diets and eviction redux. Lorenzo, overhearing, went pale. My fault. I signed. No. Alex cut in, fierce as a prairie wind. Ours to fight. We rallied, crowdfunded legal aid from queer networks, amicus briefs from ACLU heavyweights. The deposition was a circus, Elena under oath, her Botox mask cracking as my attorney paraded evidence. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, victim testimonies from her past flips. Why the house? The lawyer pressed. She faltered, eyes darting. Business. He was obsolete. The word landed like her old slur, freak, obsolete, reducing lifetimes to ledgers. But the judge saw through, dismissing with prejudice, sanctions slapping her firm. Word spread. Headlines crowed vindication for betrayed family. Her empire teetering on scandal's edge. Summer solstice brought catharsis. We hosted a block party on Maple, grills smoking with brats and ribs, neighbors toasting our saga like local legend. Lorenzo danced with a widow from down the street, tentative steps blooming into smiles. Alex and I swayed on the porch, his head on my shoulder. We made it, he murmured. I nodded, the stars above pricking like promises. But the true climax wasn't legal thunder. It was quiet. In the attic at dawn, Lorenzo knocked, bearing coffee and a deed, freshly notarized, my name beside his. Co-owner, he said simply. No more stealing. Tears blurred the ink. This was legacy, not loot. Trust rebuilt, betrayal's echo silenced. Years folded forward. The book hit shelves, a bestseller in the vein of Ta-Nehisi Coates. Raw, redemptive. Alex tenure-tracked at Northwestern, our attic evolving into a nursery when adoption papers cleared. Little Jamie, a Southside foster kid with Lorenzo's grin. Uncle L doted, teaching curveballs in the yard. His history lessons now laced with our story. America's messy, he'd say. But families? They endure. Elena faded to footnote, a real estate pariah, her Hamptons exile whispered in trades. No revenge, just irrelevance. In quiet moments, I'd trace the swing's chains, remembering her hiss, but it dissolved into gratitude. For Lorenzo's arms at 8, Alex's vow at 28, the house that held our hurts and healings. Humanism's grace. We weren't unbroken, but whole in our mends. In the heart of the heartland, where winds howl off the lake and dreams defy the grind, love, chosen, queer, unyielding, proved the ultimate deed. No freak here, just family etched eternal.